guys, this is Kara.
And this is Ed.
And this is the day's dumpster fire.
Hey there.
Hello, hello, hello.
Here we are. We are on episode 5.
Yeah, episode 5. Pretty cool.
It only took us months to get here.
Only took us months, but we're here, and I think we have a rhythm now, so hopefully it won't take us months to do 5 episodes.
Yeah. No, there's been a lot of YouTubing, a lot of Wikipediaing, a lot of Googling, just trying to get the basics down. And now that I think we're kind of hammering our way through that, we should be able to pick up the pace.
We're rolling.
Yeah, we're rolling with square tires, but that's fine.
At least we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Slowly. What is your trash can fire today?
Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of alluded to it a little bit ago. So the idea of the trash can fire is that we're supposed to like reflect on our own personal lives and how things have just been when we're trying to execute something, and then in our own lives it completely blows up, falls apart.
Right.
Well, and I've done this before on another episode, but I kind of want to revisit it. Now that we have got some episodes recorded, for me, it's this process of trying to edit the podcast. So I think there's a lot of people out there that have kind of wanted to start a podcast. I hope you'd start a podcast. I hope it's any topic. Like I'm sure there's podcasts out there about jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah. Anything you want, man. Whatever floats your boat. Whatever you're passionate about. Yeah.
In fact, the more passionate, the more like fine-tuned it is. Like even the most niche thing. There's podcasts out there about Maine lobsters.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. And they're probably making thousands of dollars, with their, 10, 15 followers.
Crab cakes.
Oh, yeah.
Seafood.
Actually, now I'm getting hungry. I kind of want to try to find that podcast.
Sorry.
But I kind of want to chronicle a little bit our little journey here of trying to create this podcast. So,
cool.
For those of you who've been keeping up, we've done our intro, we've done Emu Wars, we've done Gallipoli, we've done Cleopatra, we've done nuclear power plants. You probably have noticed that my voice has sounded different in every single episode. And the reason why is because Kara and we have two very different philosophies on how to do things. So Kara, I don't want to necessarily speak for you, but correct me if I'm wrong, but Kara's more go with the flow, right? Let's just
I bought one microphone and I was like, gung ho, let's go. And then that was about it.
Kara, she's just like, we got a topic, we got a microphone, we have a decent internet connection, let's go. Meanwhile, I am the one who tends to really overthink things. I tend to really overcomplicate things. I like to know what is going on at every little sound wave. I like to take a look at equipment. I'm a guy. Guys, you all know we like our gizmos, our gadgets, our fancy technology. And so basically, I started off with a cheap little microphone sound mixer doodad thing, and then we did some recording on that, and then I got like a mediocre microphone. I did a recording on that. And then now I've got this super fancy microphone that's probably way over my skill level. But I've noticed that in every single episode, I run across a unique issue whenever I get a new piece of technology at my disposal. And
meanwhile, I'm over here with just the same first microphone, guys, if you all want to know.
Yeah, so it may sound like Kara's had 5 different hosts. No, that's the same guy. It's still me. I just I every single time I upgrade something before my skill level catches up, I run into issues. So, for example, I do apologize with the nuclear power plant episode. One of the things that, and this is really what my trash can fire is hovering around, one of the things that I noticed when editing the nuclear power plant episode was that my monitor headphones that I use to record or listen to the music, listen to my voice, listen to Kara's voice, or any other channel that's coming in, well, I had the volume cranked up way too loud. My microphone was picking that up. So whatever Kara was talking, it would make this obnoxious echo on my recording on my side. So it almost sounded like we were in the same room, but we weren't. We were actually in opposite sides of the valley here in Arizona. But it had this really annoying echoing, and then whenever we were talking at the same time, it would make this weird echoey screeching noise. So, yeah, and then on top of that, I didn't have my pop filter on. So, for those of you again who are just maybe getting into this, a pop filter is that round disc that you see in front of like radio shows and stuff like that. The speaker will have this disc on it with like a screen on it, and what that does is it blocks the p sound. They call it the plosives. I had this fancy microphone. I saw a lot of YouTube videos on it, and I saw a lot of people didn't have it. And I didn't pick up any of the plosives. And yeah, I went to listen to the recording, and boom, there
it is.
It
in all its glory.
Oh yeah, no, it is. It is exquisite. So if you have a thing for like ASMR plosives, nuclear power plant fire is going to be your episode. I also noticed too when editing the Gallipoli fire episode, it was the same thing, not with the plosives, but the echoes. I've gotten really good at removing the echoes, but now with this new fancy mic, I've got to get really good at preventing the plosives as well as editing out the screw-ups before. So what I have determined is this: for those of you who make it through like episode 20, because I've reached out to other podcasters and they said the first 20 episodes are the roughest. Like the listeners that get through the first 20 episodes are the super fans.
Appreciate you all.
So for those of you out there, we'll address you like on social media or whatever on episode 20. It's with us from day one. One of these days when we get merch lined up or something like that, we'll hit you up. Because I feel
you deserve it.
Yeah, I feel really bad for your ears to have to go through our learning struggles or my learning struggles. Kara's already got this figured out. Just a microphone and a computer, and she's good to go. Meanwhile, like, wait till I buy a new computer, and then everything's going to be all haywire all over again. So
it's fine. We'll get there. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it's a learning curve, and thankfully, I feel like most people, especially like when it comes to public speaking, I kind of see this as a public speaking type of thing. People are usually very forgiving.
Yeah,
and so yeah, if you want to be on the forgiving side, I totally appreciate it. But we will get there. We will have this podcast sounding, hopefully by 100 episodes, we'll actually sound like we know what we're doing.
Goal 50.
Well,
expectation maybe 100.
Well, I mean, I'm like a C plus kind of a guy, so I aim low. Therefore, 100 episodes it is.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so that's kind of like a sidestep trash can fire. I'll have something more glamorous for the next time. But what do you have coming up today?
Today, we are going to discuss why the heck in the world they would think it's a good idea to build an entire city out of wood.
Okay.
And then it burns.
Yeah.
It all burns.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about Chicago in 1871 in October. We are going to talk about a legendary cow. Legendary for actually some really disconcerting reasons that we'll get into.
Now, keep in mind here, you don't want to offend me because my whole family is from Elgin, Illinois, which is just outside Chicago. So
On that subject, I don't want to offend you. Where did your family emigrate from, ancestrally speaking?
Okay,
You know.
so I can go all the way back to the 1400s.
Okay, let's
Um,
not go that far back. Just where is the country of origin before they got to Chicago?
okay, so my family came to America in two different batches. The first batch came in, I think it was around the 1840s, and they came over from England and they were mining engineers. They bypassed Chicago. They made their way out to San Francisco. They set up a whole bunch of mines, made a ton of money, and yeah.
Okay, get rich.
Yep,
Awesome.
get rich, awesome.
Let's go.
My line, the one that I'm from, they came over in the 1860s, and the patriarch signed up for the Union Army during the Civil War. Cool. In the process of cleaning his gun, he shot himself in the leg, and then he died from infection. And he had 3 sons. 2 of them were hanged because they were horse thieves. And the third one, which is my direct line, was an alcoholic. And ever since then, the Malpis have been disappointing America for generations.
All right.
So yeah, that's like my
Well.
brief family history. So England. The short answer, Kara,
The short
is
answer
England.
is England. Okay, so you're not Irish, so we may not
No.
offend you.
Yeah, no, the Irish, I know they had a rough go.
They had it rough, and we will talk about that.
Yes.
So when I went into this thinking I wanted to talk the most about the aftermath. And then after I was doing my research, I wanted to research the most about before the fire happened, which I thought was interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Chicago was like and what the climate was like before the fire happened, the fire itself, and then after.
Okay.
So
and real quick before we move on, what Kara and I actually kind of have in mind is, yes, we have dumpster fires. You kind of get the gist by now what we're going to be talking about, but we kind of want to do a little series, kind of like this one. This is like the first episode of literal fires.
Literal fires.
Yeah.
That were also dumpster fires.
I mean, you don't get like if you're from Chicago, I think 1871 was the epitome of a dumpster fire.
A large.
But yeah, we're gonna look at
dumpster fire.
And we're gonna look at all sorts of stuff. Like there's been fires in New York City, the sacking of Rome.
London was a big one too.
Basically any city before steel was implemented in construction, any major cities had quite a fire. So yeah, this is actually kind of the first installment of literal fires.
Quite a fire. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. So before the big massive fire, so when Chicago was basically inducted as a city or whatever, it was a very small outpost in the 1930s, and in just 40 years, that 40-year time span, it grew. So it was really fast, expansive growth, and the local political leaders were more concerned about the growth of business and money than they were like the infrastructure or safety of the city.
Wasn't Chicago like in direct competition to New York City?
In terms of growth than the Industrial Revolution, yes.
Okay.
Which is, I think that comes more after the fire happens, because after the fire happens, they start building skyscrapers and they start modernizing, and that's when the economy really booms, which is interesting.
Okay.
And that's when you start seeing, when you research, that's when you start seeing the direct comparisons of Chicago and New York City.
But I thought like the leadership of Chicago at that time, they were trying to emulate or trying to they had like a rivalry with Chicago. Well, not Chicago, but they had a rivalry with New York City. Honestly,
you're probably right. I haven't read too much into that particular part of it, but it does make sense because all they wanted to do was grow the city economically, and they did it in the cheapest way possible. So it does make sense that they were in some sort of economic or growing race. That sounds stupid.
Like
Grow race with New York City.
so like they made really wise decisions, like wooden sidewalks and let's
Yeah.
cover our roofs with tar and
Yeah. Like, so yeah, buildings were built really, really fast and they were all built out of wood. For the most part, wood frame structures was the way to go because it was the cheapest way to build things. There were also stone and brick structures that you could use. A lot of the older buildings there, their foundations were stone and brick. So they had a few buildings, especially in the northern part of the city, where they were talking about how it's fireproof and it's not going to burn because the foundations were stone and brick structures. So a lot of the basements, they would go down into the basements and they thought they were safe, but really it was like a furnace in there.
wait. So their house would catch on fire,
Uh-huh.
and they would go down to their basement, which is insulated with brick and stone.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't occur to them that it's like a fireplace where you like the coals and everything is like gravity's going to make everything come down on them.
I don't know, man. Even some people went high. They
Okay.
went up onto the balconies to watch the fire in their supposed fireproof building, and then they realized later that that's not a good idea, and they had to evacuate.
Oh, I love 1800s logic.
Isn't it amazing? Anyways, we'll get there. So most of the buildings in Chicago at that time were all framed wood. At that time, in the 1870s, early 1870s, we had about 1,100 factories, commercial buildings. The Chamber of Commerce was there, and it was made out of wood. Wholesale houses, retail and department stores, and even the courthouse in the South Division Central Business District, that was made out of wood.
Please tell me the
88
blacksmith
miles.
was the smithy was made out of wood.
He was probably far away in the yards somewhere. He probably wasn't touched. Good for him. 88 miles of paved streets. That was paved with wood. 561 miles of wooden sidewalks and tens of thousands of wooden or wood trim structures. So, I mean, it was literally a city of wood. I didn't know that the sidewalks were made out of wood.
Yeah.
Like, that blew my mind. So I just wanted to kind of reel off those numbers just to kind of give you an idea of how much wood went into building this city at the time.
Sounds like they would have
1,100
been
factories, dude. That's crazy.
It sounds like the next worst thing they could have chosen was like black powder.
I mean, you might as well add to it. And on top of that, in the northern part of the city, they had like a garden space with countless trees and bushes and plant life. It was a really large area of the city in downtown, and that just was obliterated. So the firefighting force was small for a city so large and made out of wood, so they were spread really thin. The interesting thing about the firefighting force in Chicago at the time period was they actually updated their telecommunication systems. They updated their pump house for the water usage. All the tunnels were new. I think they built it in 1870 or 1869. So all that stuff was new, but the problem was the fact that they were in a 3-month drought, so there was no rain at the time, and there were about 20 fires throughout Chicago the week before. There was a fire the day before this happened. So despite all of the new equipment that the firefighters had, there wasn't enough. There was no way that they could cover the entire city. They didn't have the manpower. They didn't have enough equipment. Like, yeah, the equipment was new, good for you, but they didn't have enough to cover the entire city. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We have a small firefighting force, and they did try really hard to keep it updated, but it just wasn't big enough. They were already fighting fires the entire week. The year before, in 1870, Chicago averaged 2 fires per day.
Whoa.
So it's like nothing new that the fires happened. They knew that this was a problem, and the problem with their problem solving, I like the word problem today. The problem with their problem solving was that they were improving how they fought fires when they happened. They were not improving how to prevent them. Yes.
Well, and you know what's interesting? The way that you're describing it, I'm surprised that Chicago hasn't burned down earlier.
Right? It's crazy.
20 fires before, day fired like 2 fires per day. I'm shocked that it even made it this far.
Agreed. Like it was something. And then on top of that too, that was just the infrastructure aspect of it. You're getting immigration, so you have a lot of different people coming from different parts of the world. In this particular city, you had a lot of Irish immigrants, you had a lot of German immigrants, you had people who have been there for a long time, all coming into this area, mainly due to the railways. So it was a big melting pot of different people, and there was a lot of economic and social disparity. So the rich people were all on the north side, and the poor people were all on the south side, kind of like it is now, except back then the poor people were all immigrants. So it was a lot of workers running the city and rich tycoon people thinking they run the city when they really don't, and they think they're better than everybody else. And then on top of that, we are also just a few years after the Civil War. So there's a lot going on socially and culturally as well during this time period, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere, I think this may when I was in high school or whatever, but I remember like when the fire first broke out, and then nobody really mentioned anything of how serious this is until it crossed the river and went to the north side, and all the rich people were now affected.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit too. So nobody really knows how the fire started. The legend is that Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocked over a lantern and it burned the barn, and then it goes from there. The problem with that is Mrs. O'Leary was Irish, and her husband was Irish. And again, at that time period, it was a lot of stereotypical hating of immigrants.
Well, the Irish Catholics.
Yes, and they were Catholic as well.
Yeah.
So there was that. And
they needed a scapegoat.
They were the scapegoat. That's exactly right. They were the scapegoat, and they were blamed for the scape cow. They were blamed for this whole thing. And in 1997, they were actually exonerated from the blame. So it took 120 years for them to be proven innocent.
I personally think that Mrs. O'Leary's cow, or Mrs. O'Leary, was trying to find a creative way to compete with the South in terms of barbecue.
After the War of Attrition, at the end of the Civil War, I mean, I could see that. Yeah,
like she saw this delicious cow, and she wanted to find a creative way to smoke it. And so why not cook it Lewis style in a barn?
She just wanted to feed the neighborhood man. Yeah. She's just a kind person.
Yeah, she just wanted some dino ribs and some brisket to go around. And
I love her even more now.
Yeah, no, it's now I made her a legend, like a good legend.
Look at this. She's a hero in my book.
America's first pitmaster.
Oh God. Okay, so some other theories that were thrown around. Some people said it was some boys smoking in or near around the barn. And then my favorite theory is that the barn caught fire by a falling meteorite, which they never found. That probably has no water to it, but I like just the fact that it was a meteorite's fault. Huh?
Can I elaborate on that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So for those of you who know me, I'm a big astronomy nut. And I heard about this theory way back when the History Channel actually had history shows. The idea was this: it wasn't necessarily a meteorite. A meteorite will hit the ground, but by the time the meteorite actually gets to the ground, assuming that it's not like a planet-destroying dinosaur extinction type of asteroid, by the time it hits the ground, it's not hot enough to really do anything. It just makes a crater. The issue, or the real culprit, could have been a comet. So I think it was in the 1840s. There was a comet. Yeah, I got to be real precise here, but there was a comet that the astronomers were kind of watching, and it broke apart. Whenever a comet breaks apart, it's probably because there's a lot of methane. So yes, we think a comet as being a giant ball of ice. That is true, but comets also can contain a lot of methane. So
with the cow, that's pretty good.
yes,
It's ironic.
Yeah, it's a giant frozen fart ball.
Yay!
And so that comet kind of broke apart, and they lost track of it afterwards. Maybe with today's technology, they would have been able to track it, but yeah, they lost track of it. And the theory is that, especially if you look at a map of how this fire spread, it went south to north. However, the weather reports at that time were saying that the winds were blowing east to west. So the theory is that the comet, which would enter the atmosphere, the chunk of the comet, entered the atmosphere and then flew over Chicago, and parts of it would almost kind of rain down. And there was actually a lot of people who reported like fireballs in the sky, falling stars, which are just little streaks of light. They're not actually stars falling. There's a lot of people reported in that part of the country, like the night before, they reported seeing some strange sky phenomena. Now, that could have been people coming out of the woodwork saying, but because of the fire, they could have come out of the woodwork and said, "Oh, I saw this and that and saw this, and here we are." But it is interesting to note that there could have been an influx of falling stars, fireballs in the sky, weird blue flashing lights, which is typical for what a comet enters. It's made of methane. It will make a blue flame because it's a fart that's entering the atmosphere. And so yeah, if you look at the path of the fire, how it went south to north, and then also too, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was actually fires that broke out like north of Chicago. Like there was 3 other fires that broke out right around the same time.
Yeah, and there was one the day before as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's any way to really test it, but it is, to me, it's an interesting theory. I would assume that the comet would be going west to east or east to west, as opposed to north to south. But yeah, no, that's kind of the details of the comet theory.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yes, there you go. There's your useless fact for the day.
Yay! All right. So the fire started in or around the barn, and the exact address is 137 Coven Street on the city's southwest side, if anybody wants to Google Maps that. And the fire started, reports say, around 9 p.m. on Sunday evening on the 8th, and it lasted 30 hours. So if you can imagine, just 30 hours of straight inferno. Sounds terrible. The fire moved from the southwest to the northeast, and it moved very quickly for a fire. Many people didn't realize how dire the situation was, so even in the south, I think the people on the south side of the city were a little bit more realistic. They started evacuating, getting their things together, and moving very quickly. The other thing is they were poor on the south, and they were immigrants on the south side of the city, so they didn't have as much to move. The interesting thing is, I was listening to a separate podcast about this subject to kind of get my brain rolling, and they were talking to a professor in Illinois, and she was talking about how when the fire first started, or when you think about the natural disaster, all of the social impacts or all of the separation of rich and poor goes away. But then it immediately comes back when you talk about how they leave and what they take with them when they leave and evacuate the city, which I just thought was a really interesting point.
I love how class, even in a massive disaster, class always seems to come up.
Right? I thought it was really interesting. It was a really interesting thought, because a lot of what happened was in the South Side, they lost everything, but they didn't have much to lose. So they just ran on foot, and if they were lucky, they had a horse, and they would escape that way. And then once the fire spread north to the richer parts of town, they had more they had to pack up, but they may have had servants to help them. And they also had like the buggy with the horse, so they could pack more of their crap,
I mean, Mrs. O'Leary had a cow.
She did have a cow. She had 3 or 4 cows, if I remember, and then it was either like a sheep or a horse.
Oh wow!
Extra random one.
Sorry, now I'm just thinking of like she had a cow. Like she lost her mind. Like, oh my gosh, Mrs. O'Leary literally had a cow.
Ah.
Yeah. So
that was your
the
dad
junior
joke
high,
for the
the
day.
14-year-old me is just running rampant right now.
Oh, God. God. All right. So it started in the Southwest and then it moved northeast. And as it did, people are running, they're screaming, they're gathering their items, their children, families are being separated as it moves north slowly. It was just, everything was chaos. When it began getting to the water, people, especially firefighters or like city council members and the mayor and all that stuff, they were hoping that the river or the water would stop the fire because the main portion of the river does run through the city, separating the north and the south. And that didn't go as planned. In fact, it kind of added to the fire. The reason for that is the fire first hopped the water. Also, there was a large amount of traffic with the steamboats and other boats that are going through carrying for trade and things like that. So the grease from the boats and the steamboats and the boats themselves, they all caught fire. So it literally just fueled the fire as opposed to putting it out. So it hopped the river, went over to the north side and started going towards downtown. Once it hit downtown, it burned a number of notable buildings, including the library. The library was supposed to be one of those fireproof buildings, and it had like a basement with the stone or the rock or whatever. So people began, when they were evacuating, they started taking like their precious items and priceless things to the library. And one of the things that were in the library was an original draft of the Emancipation Proclamation signed by Abraham Lincoln and all that good stuff. And the librarian couldn't break the display case that document was in, and it was lost in the fire.
I hate hearing about. I mean, obviously the fires are like historical fires are devastating because of the loss of life and everything. But part of my soul dies a little bit when you hear about the library burning down.
Oh, that's the worst. Mine too. It's awful
Because the history, and I don't care what city it is, every library kind of has like a civic duty to try to maintain and preserve a piece of its local history. So like when we hear about like Alexandria burning down or Rome or London, it's just like, oh man, why?
It all hurts my heart.
Yeah, all the stuff that is lost there, top of the lives too, which is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, man, some crazy stuff. Fire, you don't play with fire.
Yeah, no. I'm right there with you. It's
it's devastating.
I hear it's hot.
I hear it's hot. No. You
With
are on
two
a roll.
T's.
God. All right. So while it was in downtown, the fire burned at the courthouse. And when it was coming up at the courthouse, we have to remember that courthouses also had jail cells in them. This particular courthouse had a jail cell in the basement. So the employees of the courthouse had to make the decision as to whether do we release these prisoners? Do we keep them here and just let them die here? It was kind of a interesting moral question of whether or not we release the murderers and the thieves and God knows who else to escape with their lives, or do we let them burn?
Oh, jeez, what a...
Can you imagine?
I hope they just let him go.
They did. Spoiler
because like what
they let them go.
like all the thieves, right? Cities burned down. What are they going to steal?
Right, which also is interesting. I'll touch on that. But yeah. So they did. They let them go, and as soon as they did let them go, an interesting note that I got from a really cool website that you should all go check out, the greatchicagofire.org. They said that once they let them go and the people escaped, the big Chicago courthouse bell that was sounding the alarm that when the fire was happening, it fell from the top of the tower and onto the courthouse building right as they left the building. I was like, dang, it's dramatic.
Ooh, that had to make a racket.
Right? So by 3:30 in the morning, the roof of the pumping station, the brand new pumping station that they put in downtown, it collapsed and destroyed the pumping station. So the firefighters had to get another way to put out the fire. It just made everything worse.
Buckets. Lots
buckets.
And lots of buckets. Bring me a bucket.
It's like that scene in Dumbo with the clowns. Some buildings, especially in the more wealthy parts of the city, were described as being fireproof. We discussed this earlier. and a lot of those people were fleeing to those buildings. And when they got to the buildings, they thought they were safe, so they would actually go up to the rafters and watch the fire burn everything. So it was like, you know how humans as a species have a weird infatuation with things like this, where it's just you can't stop watching it even though it's horrible.
It's the phenomenon. It's like the voyeur in all of us.
Yeah, so that's what was happening, where these people were going up on the rafters and watching this, all the devastation. Like, they couldn't look away and they wanted to watch it. And then they realized that the buildings that they were in were not actually fireproof. They were fire resistant, and that may not be the best place for them. So they all decided to either stay there in the fire and die, and some of them did, and then some of them were able to escape. It kind of depends on how fast they were when they realized it. So that was basically the devastation of the fire and a little bit of what it was like to be there. So on top of all the chaos of the fire itself, people were also taking advantage of the chaos, as you do, and they were looting and stealing in buildings that were not yet burned, which I thought was a really interesting fact. So you just add chaos on top of chaos, and people were trying to escape. Another interesting fact that I read somewhere was that they were all trying to escape in different parts of the city that they didn't think the fire could reach, so like the shores of the lake. And there was this old cemetery that they were moving, so they had a lot of empty grave plots where caskets used to be, and they would drop into there to escape the smoke. A lot of really crazy, morbid stuff going on trying to escape the fire.
I'd have to imagine the smoke was pretty bad. I have a funny feeling. I think the most of the deaths from this were probably from asphyxiation.
Yeah, probably. I could definitely see that. Yeah, so finally, after fighting fires and escaping fires and just purely running from it, because you have to remember the firefighting squad, they couldn't get to everybody because they were so small. They were able to kind of control the southwest part of the city, but the north was on their own type of situation. And finally, on the morning of the 10th, rain started to fall, and that put out the fire itself. So the combination of the rain and then the firefighting finally put out the fire. And to me, what the interesting thing was, is even after the fire was extinguished, it took 2 days for the city itself to cool off. So people couldn't even go outside after the fire was gone because the stone and the brick that was left, even the ground was too hot to touch.
Jeez.
Also, another fun fact, the O'Leary cottage, the house, survived the fire. The barn is what burned, but their house survived the fire. I thought that was
probably because their house was just out of wind's reach. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah, the barn was north of the cottage.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of imagine it, the house, and then the barn was north of the cottage, and then the barn, because that's what started it, and it moved north from the barn.
I wonder if Mrs. O'Leary. I wonder if she knew all the people to the north and to the east of her were extremely, anti-religious or very, very phobic of her background. And I wonder if she purposely planned this out so that when she lit that barn on fire, it would purposely take out all of her enemies.
She's just like super spiteful about it.
Yeah, just like, take this, jerks.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think
I felt bad for her.
Yeah, she probably got a bad rap after.
She did. She got a really bad rap, and she was blamed for it all the way until her death in 1895 or 96. She died of pneumonia, and she was still blamed for that incident. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until 97 where she was proven innocent, and that's horrible to me. So in total, after the fire was put out, the burned area was about 4 miles long, an average 3/4 of a mile wide. There were over 28 miles of streets that were paved with wood and 120 miles of sidewalks that were all burned. Over 17,000 buildings. So the rough count that you can usually find is 17,500 buildings that were burned and $200 million in property damage. According to the Great Chicago Oil website, go check it out, it was a third of the value of the entire city. About 300 people died, and over 100,000 people were displaced.
That 200 million, is that like in 1800s money or
1800s money?
Oh boy.
Yeah. All of the sources that I found were that same number for 1800s money.
So I'm kind of curious to see how much that would have to be in the billions by today's standards.
It has to be. You can probably do a quick revert and look it up.
4,855,262,295.08 cents.
Woo!
That's
8 a lot of money.
Yeah, that 8 cents just tips it over for me.
That's a lot of money. All right, that's gross. So, with that in mind, most of the buildings in downtown and on the north side were insured, but from what I found, and maybe somebody can do a little bit more digging on this for me, the insurance wasn't very clear as far as how much money people got back or how much the insurance companies could actually afford considering how large this fire was. Despite all of the destruction, the mills and the Union Stockyard and all of the railroad infrastructure, all of that remained intact, which is really good. That was super vital for Chicago coming back to life and basically coming out of the ashes economically from this, as just the railroads alone were a huge help. And then you have the stockyards and some of the mills that really helped them get back on their feet. Not long after the fire, I think it was only a few days, the mayor at the time, Roswell B. Mason, got up and basically started organizing everything. So he had a huge humanitarian issue on his hands. So what he did is he gave the humanitarian efforts to a, what is this called? To an organization called...
Here it is.
Oh, did you find it? Chicago Relief and Aid Society. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Wikipedia.
Thank you, Wiki. So, anyway, the mayor basically gave all of the humanitarian efforts to the Chicago Relief and Aid Society. And what that society was, it was pretty much made up of a lot of Civil War veterans and a lot of men who just wanted to do good for their community. They built shelters, they made and distributed clothes, they distributed food, they distributed water, they helped people get from point A to point B. They did a whole lot of stuff for people who were displaced from this fire, all for free. So it was all volunteer effort. They did so much for the city, and mad props to them.
Well, and that's not even including all the, like, America kind of rallied around Chicago as well.
Oh, I'm gonna hit on that too.
Oh, okay.
Locally, that's what was going on, and then the mayor also began reaching out to governments, the federal government, city governments. He also reached out internationally, and he was able to raise $5 million for the aid of Chicago. I also read somewhere that Ulysses S. Grant wrote them a personal check to help with the effort. It was, in today's money, that's about $121 million, give or take some. And that's actually pretty good considering. And yeah, so it was an international affair at this point. Everybody knew about the fire. Everybody tried to chip in and help where they could. And that was actually a really big help for the city. Newspapers immediately began publishing things about the fire, but they also published things like the Chicago Tribune wrote the second city would rise again. They were talking about how the city is like a phoenix where it would rise from the ashes and rebuild. So they came out of this disaster really, really positive. They were like, yeah, this really sucks, but we're going to rally and we're going to rebuild and all this stuff. And I really give them props for that. So that's awesome. 1 month after the fire, Joseph Medill won office for mayor. After our boy Mason, he ran on improving fire safety procedures and stricter fire codes, and people think he won because of those policies, and they also think he won because most of the votes just burned, and they're like, whatever, give it to this guy.
Could you imagine if that happened today in our political climate?
Oh god, it would be a nightmare. Imagine.
It's already bad enough, let alone having all that. That's wild.
Oof. Anyway, so this guy for mayor, that's what he ran on, and he really stuck to it. He wanted to stick with the new fire codes. He really wanted the new infrastructure that was going up to be fireproof, not fire resistant. And architects from all over the world and all over the country began flooding to Chicago. It was almost like an architectural renaissance in the city of Chicago after the fire, because these architects basically had free reign as long as they followed the procedures like they should.
As long as it was safe.
As long as it was fire safe and it was up to code, they could basically do whatever they want. Chicago was the first place in America to have a skyscraper. So it is the home of the skyscraper. I found it really interesting that these skyscrapers were the first metal framed buildings to be taller than 10 stories. So, fun fact, if you ever want to impress people at parties and you're in Chicago, you can tell them skyscrapers were invented in Chicago. It was the first modern city in the world. So, a combination of innovative architecture, railroads, and mills, Chicago's economy had a major rejuvenation period and a big bump in population. In 1870, just before the fire, Chicago had a little bit over 300,000 people. By the 1890s, the city had 1.7 million people, and it was the second largest city in America just after New York. So, in a way, the fire, even though it had a lot of devastation and a lot of people died and a lot of money was spent, it was actually a catalyst for making Chicago one of the biggest cities in America. By 1893, it was ready to hold the World's Columbian Exposition, also known as the Chicago World's Fair. So one of the biggest events at the time. It lasted 6 months. It was like this big, grand international event.
Yeah.
So just 20
like the grand
years
reopening.
after. Yeah, like a grand reopening. And just 20 years after that, 20 years after all of that devastation, they were able to build the city back up and make it immaculate for this big exposition, which I thought was really, really impressive. And that is the Chicago Fire in a nutshell.
Well, and I love how it's a classic case of America banding together. America has always been very divided. Ever since the Pilgrims set foot on this land, America politically has always been very divided. But it seems like one characteristic of this country throughout history is whenever something bad like this happens, at the drop of a hat, this country rallies.
Oh, yeah.
I remember in 9/11, just how the whole nation changed by the afternoon of all that going down. And I was looking here through some statistics, like New York City gave $450,000 along with clothing and provisions. St. Louis gave $300,000. The Common Council of London gave 1,000 guineas. Guineas. I mean, is that like beer? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'll have to look that up later.
Greenock, Scotland, population of 40,000. They raised £518. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Buffalo, all commercial rivals donated hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not even including, like, there was a lot of groups up there that were donating books and all that. And if I remember correctly, there was a very young Andrew Carnegie. He was kind of messing around with this new metal called steel. And he was given some of the biggest contracts to rebuild Chicago. Like, that whole fire, I think, kind of ushered in the Gilded Age. Because...
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole article on it. I'm going to link it.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, because because you had the railroad tycoons who had to get materials and resources in there. You actually had the upcoming oil tycoon like Rockefeller. Because how else are you going to power and heat a new city like that? You have Carnegie, who was contracted, his General Steel Company was contracted to supply the steel and I-beams for a lot of the skyscrapers. Or J.P. Morgan, he had to come in and finance a lot of this stuff because that's what the Morgan family did. That's how the bank worked, is they would take failed businesses, i.e. stuff that's been burned up in Chicago, and then reorganize it and make it profitable, and then they take their earnings out of it. I mentioned before, like the railroads. So Vanderbilt, he owned a lot of the railways up in that part of the country. So, like, yeah, this fire really created a vacuum that sucked in all scores of people with backgrounds and money to really invest in that city. And so, yeah, it's a perfect example. It's a beautiful example of how this country can really rally and turn around at the drop of a hat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really cool thing to take away from it. Like, yeah, this was a disaster. It was horrible. It was chaotic. But, I mean, they really rallied together. The world really rallied together to just help this one city flourish. Yeah. And it's still flourishing today, which I think is super great. I love that city. I've been there. Love it. Go in March. They dye the river green. May
Really?
not be very good for the environment, but it is fun to watch.
Oh, for St. Patty's Day?
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, even after the fire, if anybody wants to check out what happened in Chicago during the Gilded Age, that's also really fascinating. Like, yeah, you had all the tycoons and monopolies basically taking over the city after this. And then you start to read about strikes and the disparity of workers and things like that. And then World War I happens, and then World War II happens, and
and then Korea, and then Vietnam, and then
yeah, just all the major events that affect the economy.
Well, I was reading here. One interesting thing is that General Philip H. Sheridan.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention him. He did great things.
Yeah, he was the general that the mayor called in to like basically execute martial law, and so yeah. I mean, he brought his men in to kind of control the city, but it was I guess there's like a big old giant statue devoted to him. He saved Chicago 3 times: the Great Fire in October of 1871. And I guess he used explosives to stop the spread. So I imagine
so what he
blew up
did,
buildings that could catch on fire.
Yeah, so what he did to stop the spread of the fire is he basically went to the mayor to get authorization. He was like, look, this is what they do in forest fires. In order to stop their spread, you don't give the fire fuel. So let me blow up like this big block of buildings, and it'll stop the spread. And it's going to basically stop the fire there because it won't have any fuel.
Wow, that's a gamble because I mean the fire crossed the river.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Like, what's going to stop this fire? Blowing up buildings? And apparently it worked.
Wow. Yeah, and then I guess again, after the Great Fire, he protected the city. And then lastly, in 1877, during the communist riots, he rode in from 1,000 miles away to restore order. So
the guy deserves a statue.
Yeah, it's like the Sheridan guy. It's like, good Lord, can you guys just like stop? Just calm down. Stop having everything go up in flames, will you? I just want to be able to have 10 years of not having to rush back to Chicago to fix it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. But yeah, that's the fire in a nutshell. If you want to do more research, we'll have links in the show notes. The GreatChicagoFire.org has a lot of primary resources you can look at. So if you go to the image library, they have all kinds of cool stuff. They have letters and journal entries and newspaper articles that you can read. I just read a transcript or a note that somebody sent to his brother telling him how Chicago is burning. There's all kinds of cool stuff. There's memoirs, there's art pieces. One person made a porcelain doll bust and it says Relic Fire 1871. Somebody carved it in there.
Wow.
There's a lot of cool stuff that you can check out. There's a fire helmet. So I suggest you really check it out. There's a lot of cool things that you can look at on this website.
I'm looking through it right now. This is pretty comprehensive.
Oh yeah, it's well thought out. I like it a lot. It's really good.
Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Cool deal. No, that was awesome. That's like that's like I said, that's the epitome of a literal fire right there.
Fire
that we'll revisit. We'll visit these throughout the show's future history of famous fires, as well as like environmental stuff. Really bad forest fires and all that kind of stuff. So no, that's a really really solid episode there.
Yeah, it's fun. Fun to look up, fun to research, and I can't wait to do the next one, whenever that will be. I don't know yet. We'll find out. So, Ed, what do you have in the wings for us next time?
I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. So I've got a couple of options here that I'm still mulling around. One of the things that has always fascinated me is politics, and I fully understand that talking about politics or taking a stance on any podcast can really cause a lot of heartburn.
It makes me nervous, honestly.
Yeah, and that's why the way I approach politics is I really don't have my views. I don't find my views as fascinating as I find everybody else's views. I'm the kind of guy that believes that we need Democrats, you got to have Republicans, you got to have independents, you got to have a diverse democracy where everybody in every facet is represented. And so one of the things that I've been noticing lately as I'm getting older is how the news media has been really divided. It's been heavily divided, and I think there's two main towers. I've been watching Lord of the Rings lately. There's two towers. You've got CNN, and then you've got Fox News, and it seems like whatever CNN says, Fox News says the exact opposite, but using similar wordage. And I kind of want to look at how 24/7 news media has really done a lot more harm than good, right? It before we would turn on the 6 o'clock news or whatever. You have an hour, you kind of see what's going on in the world, and then you kind of move on about your life. You move on with your evening, your dinner, and stuff like that. What I'm noticing though is that these 24/7 news media, they take like the same 5, 6, 7 stories, and they just regurgitate it over and over and over, but they put their own political stance onto it. Like, for example, I know when President Trump was in office, CNN would often have reports about how Trump was too old, too senile, out of his mind, all that kind of stuff. Well, now that Biden's in, and I'm noticing that Fox News is saying the same exact thing about Biden, that he's too old, he's senile, he's not the right state of mind. I feel like this is doing a lot more harm than good. So in a way, it's a dumpster fire in that on the surface, hey, we know it'd be a really good idea. Let's have news media. Let's have people have access to the news 24/7, no matter where they're at. They can be informed. They can make decisions. But shortly after all that started off, it immediately divided itself to these political extremes. And I feel like it's causing a lot more harm than good today. So I'm not taking a stance on which side or like which, I'm not taking the side of liberals. I'm not taking the side of conservatives. I'm not taking any side. I'm just looking at how America is being presented with information and how it's really being commercialized and divisive, I should say, divisive in terms of its effectiveness. And what does this mean long term for America?
It makes me want to look into, at the historian here, it makes me want to look into historically to see if there was anything similar in newspapers and things like that. And I'm sure there is, just to see what the effects of that was compared to what it is now. Like the Whigs and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists and things like that. Or maybe there's some cool stuff going on in Parliament and history that we can look at.
Well, one thing that it's really interesting, and I learned this in college, is, right, you look at Democrats and Republicans. Democrats at a base level have a more loose interpretation of the Constitution. Republicans have a more strict interpretation of the Constitution. And if you look at American history, like say before the Civil War, the Democrats were in the South. The Democrats were the conservatives.
Right.
And the Republicans were more of the liberals.
Yeah.
And then after the Civil War, it flipped.
Yeah.
And so there was a Fox News thing I was reading where there was a senator. He proposed to have the Democratic Party disbanded because of how Democrats supported slavery. And anybody who knows anything about American history would know that, well, during and before the Civil War, the Democrats and the Republicans and the ideologies were flip-flopped.
Right.
And so it's, I just feel like, I feel like America's been down this path so many times. You can read transcripts of how Congress worked during the Civil War, like the federal level, and how even though, the South seceded, even the northern politicians were extremely divided and insulting and throwing shade back and forth. I mean, look at Alexander
Beating
Hamilton
each
and Aaron
other
Burr.
with clubs.
I don't know. I don't know if there were so many clubs. But
it was a cane. It was a cane.
Oh, that was a cane.
It was a cane.
But I mean, yeah, you look at Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr.
Sir.
Some of you may have seen that there was a little musical that was put on that was based on that.
Yes.
And like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson hated each other. They were at war, and they would write these scathing editorials in the newspapers, like back and forth towards each other. So America's always been divided, but I feel like with this news media and the way that it's being portrayed incessantly, I feel like people aren't able to meet in the middle anymore, and that's a problem. I feel like that's like the dumpster fire unto itself, where people can't come together and meet up on things.
Yeah, it is a problem. And just still thinking at it historically, I'm scared to compare it to the politics of the Civil War because of the similarities. Like, that's just a scary thought.
Yep. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to be working on next. I'm going to be expanding my my podcast editing skill set and try to include some audio clips from these news stations where they're basically saying the same thing, but just different political spectrums. And so, yeah, the next one will probably be a lot more discussion based rather than historical. But I do think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I'm a firm believer that we have a moral responsibility. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We are legally permitted, but more importantly, morally obligated to have differences of opinions and still get along.
I can't agree.
So yeah, that's what that's what I'm going to be kind of diving into, and yeah, hopefully the comment section doesn't explode after that, but I guess we'll find out.
For the record, I am terrified to record this episode.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not here to take a stance on what's right or what's wrong. I'm not looking at political issues. I'm just looking at how 24/7 news media is really more divisive. That's the problems that we're getting into, rather than reproductive rights, like.
Okay, so we're going to avoid any issues and solely look at news and social media and how it spreads.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not taking a stance on the actual issues that are out there. Okay. I'm taking a stance on how these issues are being presented in a way that the information is being spun and twisted, and it's from all sides. It's from both ends of the spectrum. So no political party is right or wrong. I'm not here to get into that. Yeah. But I do want to dig into how the media is really dividing us as a nation.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes more sense in my brain. Thank you for clarifying, because I was like, God, this sounds terrible, and I'm looking for a subject that I can do to really, really lighten things up. I'm like, okay, where's a funny one over here? Stupid crimes. Let's do that one.
Well, I think there will be some funny aspects of it. Like, once you actually listen to these news reports, like side by side from like CNN and Fox, it's almost comical about what they're saying about the opposite side. Like, they're making the same arguments about the opposite side. It's hilarious. It really is. Like, really? And the only way you can pick it up is if you go to both agencies and you listen to them side by side about what they're saying. Say 4 years ago from today, what CNN was saying about Trump was the same thing that Fox News is saying about Biden today. Right. It's like, oh my gosh, how is this productive?
It's not at all.
Yeah, so hopefully we don't need to have a city burn down to unite this country, because that would be a bad deal.
That would be a bad deal.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, sounds good. Let's dive into it next time.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys later.
Yeah, keep it a hot mess, guys.